Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to JJ's PC Builds live stream. Oh, my head's getting cut off. Alrighty, I know it looks like I'm leaning a little bit over onto the camera, which I am, but I'm gonna let everybody get settled in. It looks like we're gonna do a live one today. This one, I don't know how long we're going to do it, but I know we're going to do it for a couple hours maybe, hopefully. Hopefully y'all get in on it and let me know what you think about it, and make sure you got your drinks, make sure you got your snacks, and so on. So I'm going to give it a little time, let everybody get in here and get in on the show. So, if this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours. What I mean by 4,000 watch hours, watch the videos from beginning to end, would be much appreciated, would help the channel grow. And thank you for all the new subscribers we did get in. It looks like you got 4 or 5 new subscribers in. Thank you for joining the family. Welcome to JJ's PC Builds. And all my veteran subscribers, thank you all for the love and support you've shown us on the channel and helping us, watching those videos and telling your friends, your families, and everything else to come on down and subscribe and, watch the videos. So, but today is going to be Q&A day. So if you didn't catch the opening, I understand that, but you can always rewind it to the beginning to see the opening if you want to watch it from beginning to end again. Okay, so the reason why I'm doing a live stream today, there's a lot of Q&A that's going on right now that I've been hearing, that I've been getting notes about, but I'm going to share it with you today. So I'm going to let everybody get a little bit of time to get in here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to post something up on the community chat to let y'all know that we are live, that we went live. So I'm going to do that right now while everybody's trying to circle in here. Let's go to the community set. I'm going to say good morning. Good morning. Family and friends. I know y'all are listening to me while I type. Okay. There we go. And I sent you all a message just to let you know, so make sure you give it a thumbs up. Give it a good old thumbs up, let everybody know. I answered all the questions this morning in the... It looks like there was a couple questions that was arisen. Okay, first start off like this. I'm not going to call anybody out by name. Y'all can look on y'all can look out for, what's on the videos, what people leave in the chats for the videos. I'm sure you can see it all there. But I'm not going to call anybody out on it. So, but I had one person that had a concern. Basically, they left the channel because they said I had too much bling. What is bling? Okay, now I'm going to make this clear. Now I'm going to see if this is too much bling. Okay, so look at there. Believe it or not, that's the opening to the way I did my channel the first time. So where's the bling? That's what I want to know. That's the same thing. That's the same video that's in a loop that I used to use for my openings. I'm just using the fire bit that gives it it draws attention and everything else, kind of makes it look cool. I thought it looked cool myself. I mean, I got my name up there, so y'all ain't got to worry about who you're talking to. I got YouTube up there. I got subscribe up there. I got JJPB, JJ's PC Builds. Where's the bling? I could see if I was decorated in diamonds or something like that, or, I had a lot of RGB going on in the background. That I consider bling. Okay? But to have that little fire in the background, that's not bling. Come on, guys. That's not bling. That's something I used back in my previous videos a long time ago for my opening for my videos. So it's not considered bling. It's just basically trademarking, it's trademarking my video. So it's because if anybody goes and tries to copy it, a little bit of copyright to it, I put my trademark behind my video, so that way y'all. I'm just saying. Somebody told me to do this way, it would look a lot better. So I did it. I took a suggestion of a YouTuber and did it this way. So blah blah blah. Okay. Now let's go back to a little bit of Q&A. Okay, first Q&A I got, and I apologize for this. I know there's nobody here just yet, but if I keep the live feed going, for a long period of time, people will join in. So it's only been going 8 minutes, and I'm marking it right here for 8 minutes. And let me move my head over. Definitely got to get a better stand for this camera. Okay, now I'm trying to adjust it, and I know y'all ain't here to just see me adjust my camera. Okay, now Q&A. Let's get to it. Let's be serious now. First Q&A I got was an email, and they said, "Hey Jay." That's a good start. What do you think about the 5600 X3D, the Ryzen 5600 X3D? Do you think it's going to be a great chip for AM4 series motherboards? Or do you think it's going to be like, a low-powered 5800 X3D? And do you think it would run good with a B450 motherboard? I couldn't really answer that question because I don't have the chip in hand. I don't have none of the X3D chips in hand, but I've watched many reviews on the 5800 X3D to get familiar with everything that's going on with it. To be honest with you, to look at the stats and everything else and where it falls and where it climbs. And I'm going to tell you, the 5800X3D came into the fact of to where it falls just behind, a little bit behind, but catches up in some games with the 7950X3D or the 7800 or 7900X, not X3D, the 7800X, and some of the X versions of the AM5 platform. So to have an AM4 processor to be as strong as that, being a 5800X3D, being as strong as that, to be honest with you, it's all into price to performance. Okay. For some, they look at it, it's not all about the price, it's just the performance. And some look at, well, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Okay. Well, this is the best way to look at it. Okay. What you do is you take and get your screen all set up like I'm doing right now. You go to your action screen, right? So what you do is you look at the prices first. So we want to see what all the new prices are today, right now, real time. This is real time. Me recording right now to you is at real time. Doing this live feed is real time. And do understand that. So looking at the fact of that, we can go to PC Part Picker. And we can go from there. So that's where our first start is. Okay, now that we're at PC Part Picker, I want you to focus yourself on the builder screen where it says builder. You clip on that. X out of everything that you were doing from the last time. I don't know why the screen doesn't why the site doesn't refresh and give you an all brand new startup anytime you disconnect from it. It's just, that's a little bit crazy. Now we got a fresh screen right here. Now let's start. Everybody says start with the CPU, start with the CPU. You already know what type of CPU you really want, but you're not sure about it because for the simple fact of the price. So that's where you click on the CPU. Okay, now if you want to look from lowest to highest at your prices, then, see this right here? There's a little, see where this is? It says price. Okay, that's lowest. That's lowest to highest price. Now, if you put the lowest price being at $75, okay, lowest price being at $75 and up, that'll give you a good starting point. So you don't get a lot of that old crap and stuff like that. Even if you put it at, let's say you want to start it off at the 10105F, okay? You look at the price and you go 7805, right? So you type in 78.05 and hit enter. Okay. So that brings you right to the beginning of that. Okay, now you're looking for your CPU. Okay, you're not sure if you're looking for integrated graphics or not. If you're looking for integrated graphics, I could already tell you what processor to get. Now, the AM5 series, I can tell you they don't have a good CUs on their integrated graphics. It always comes down to the simple point. 2 processors. 2. See that? 2 processors I always recommend. One is the Ryzen 5 5600G, and the other one is the Ryzen 7 5700G. Those are the only 2 iGPUs I would ever recommend. Until AMD shows me that they put out a new processor with better integrated graphics. Okay, something that's better than the Ryzen 7 5700G, which gives out 8 CUs. Okay, which has got a little bit more cores, but the thing is this. Now the Ryzen 5 5600Gs is 400 plus cores. That's it. Between 400 and 500, and that's it on the cores. Now the Ryzen 7 5700G might be a little bit more. I never investigated the 5700G for the simple fact I already had the Ryzen 5 5600G, and I already know what that does. But if I were to get the next step up for integrated graphics, it would be the Ryzen 7 5700G. Until AMD comes out with something better. And what I mean by something better, if you're trying to get around the fact of you don't want to, deal with the graphics card or anything else, you just want light gaming, something with old titles, and stuff like that, the Ryzen 7 5700G can game. On medium settings, it'll do 1080p. I'm not too sure about 1440p. I've always tried to steer everybody towards the 1080p. Just to let you know that, and the reason why I said 1080p is because that is the baseline of it all. You can't erase what you already have that they've been doing for so many years that everybody's accustomed to. So they can't erase the 1080p. Everybody wants to erase it and say go to 1440p and so on. That all depends on your graphics card. And that all depends on, the refresh rate and everything else. A lot of the consumers now these days, they don't really care. They don't care if it's 1080p, 1440p, or whatever. They just want a game. It does not matter. Okay, and that's what y'all have to understand. Does it really matter if you're at 1080p or 1440p? Does it really? No. Okay. It does in a matter of FPS. Some graphics cards do better on 1440p than they do 1080p. Okay. I'm not recommending to go to 4K. That's something, if you really want to go to 4K and do that, that's fine. But me, I'm just staying with 1080p because guess what? It's the cheapest graphics in the house. 1080p is the cheapest graphics in the house. You can get a 1080p monitor for $100 at Walmart. Okay, that's the whole thing. You can get 1080p graphics for $100 at Walmart. But, with your processor, you can get between $70 and up. Okay, you want to know the cheapest processors? You can always look on PC Part Picker. Do what I just did here. Put $78 and up. And then go to this little price thing and put the arrow pointing up. So this way you get from lowest to the highest. You want to start from the lowest to the highest when you're buying your processor. This way you get a better look at what you can get. Now, as far as the motherboard and what it can handle, you can always match up the motherboard to the processor. That's fine. Me, I always did the opposite. I always did the motherboard first because I wanted to know the features and everything of what the motherboard can do. And then see what kind of processor will come along with that. Because the motherboard manufacturer will tell you on their website what processors can go with that motherboard. So, if you're looking for the best of the best of the best, do your homework, look and see what kind of motherboard you want, see what everybody's chattering about, see what the best price is on that motherboard, see if you can get it cheaper or whatever the case is, and then go from there. But the thing is this, you want a motherboard that's compatible with multiple different GPUs, not just one. Not just one. You want it multiple compatible with different GPUs. Okay, you want a multi-spread, like the B450 motherboard, Asus B450 M-AII. Okay, that motherboard's $79. Okay, you go to buy that motherboard, Amazon or wherever, $79. Is it compatible with Zen 3 processors? Yeah. The 5000 series? Yes. But one bad caveat to it. Once you upgrade it to the Zen 3, you can't do Zen 1 and Zen 2. But on the other hand, look at all the processors you have to deal with Zen 3. You got multiple. Okay, now you can go all the way up to 8 core and 16 thread on that motherboard. So can it handle a Ryzen 7 5700X? Yeah, of course it can. Can it handle the Ryzen 5800X 3D? Of course it can. Okay, can it handle the Ryzen, was it 5850X or something like that? Or the 5950X, something like that? Yeah, it can. Can it handle the Ryzen 9 3950 or something like that? No. That's where it goes limited because of the VRM. Okay. Now, if you're looking for, now, understand this. If you're a first-time builder, instead of going the B450, guess what? They got $100 motherboards that are B550. It's a cheaper platform yet because everybody's transitioning to AM5. Everybody wants to run to AM5. They want to go to the next best thing. They figure, well, I'm going to get a $200 processor, like let's say the 7700. Let's go the 7700. Okay, so Ryzen 7 7700. Okay, now it's $309. Okay, so if you were to get the AM4 5800X3D, which is at $270 some, $273 or 76. Let's see what the 5800X3D is. Okay, so we go to the 5800X3D. $289. Okay, so you can see the platform difference between the two. But there's a but to this. Okay, if I were to get this right here, and I were to click add, okay, so now your price point is right here, $289.27. Just as a good thing to look at. Now, motherboard. Choose a motherboard. Okay, let's see. Right here, you can get the B450 right here for $79, and you can get that one. But the only caveat different with that is, and I explored the BIOS of that motherboard, and the only thing that I seen wrong was it was at PCIe 3.0x16. That's what I seen. What was different was it was at PCIe 3.0x16. Now, I know there's some people out there that say, well, that's not too bad. Well, I understand it's not too bad. I've had the motherboard. But if you run the iGPU runs at PCIe 4.0x8. Just to let you know. So, if that runs at 4.0x8, then motherboard manufacturers put a block on the fact of using PCIe 4.0x16 on that motherboard. Okay, so let's say you want to keep the price line. Let's see. Let's put the arrow back up. And let's go and say you want to keep the price line at $70. right? Click enter. So now your price line is at $70 or greater. So now you can do a lot of shopping. Let's say you want your manufacturer, say you want your manufacturer to be Asus, right? Let's do this. Let's click Asus. Now all the price line from $70 and up is going to come up for Asus. Okay, now the B450. Now you can go to AM4. If you want to, you can go to AM4. This will give you a better look. So now you got the price line for the AM4 series, for up and down. Okay, so they got the MK too. So I think the MK is a little different, but they don't have that in stock. See, the MK is like half of what the MA is. MA is 128 gigabytes of RAM that you can put on that computer, compared to the K version, which you only can put 64 gigs. So don't get those two mixed up. I'm just going to tell you, don't get them two mixed up. There are some versions of the Prime motherboard that only give you a certain amount of RAM. Now the one I got was the A version, the best of the best, which is $79.99. I can't believe that the K version is $89.46. You know, I can't believe that. That's just unbelievable. Okay, let's say you want to stick into B550 MA. Okay, $114.18. Let's say you don't like that motherboard. Let's say you want something better than that motherboard. Okay, I don't recommend anything with Wi-Fi built on it. If you want Wi-Fi on your motherboard, okay, if you want Wi-Fi on the motherboard, then your best thing to do is get a separate card and get the Wi-Fi on the motherboard that way. I don't know why that little box is right there, you all. I'm looking at it right now. But it shouldn't be coming out on the output. Oh, I know why. I'll have to figure that out. And I do apologize for that box being there. It's a little subscribe box. I can't believe it's that big on that small little screen, and I do apologize for that. As soon as I go back to a big screen, you'll see a little one that says subscribe, you know, and you'll go from there. Let's see. Back to what I was talking about. Yeah. If you're looking for a good motherboard, I would, and the tough are good, but I would prefer the Strix. Me, I prefer the Strix. Because back then when gamers, let me get that out of my face. Okay. Back then when gamers were talking about the AM4 series, right? They were talking about the fact of the Strix motherboard, the Strix motherboard. It was all Asus. It's always about the Strix motherboard. That's what everybody always talked about. Overclocking the Strix motherboard. Always getting the best of the best with the Strix motherboard. The Strix is the best from Asus. And that's all I've heard. Every reviewer I heard it come out of your mouth. So don't go there. And now that you're running over there to the AM5 series, The Strix is still there. You're still running and getting the RTX 4090 Strix. You're still getting everything in the Strix, you know. And now you're getting it in the Tough, because that's what products they got coming out most rarely from Asus. But and you know the funny thing is this. Everybody sat there and bashed Asus. They bashed Asus about, you know, the little discrepancies and everything else. And then other motherboard manufacturers and GPU manufacturers started making that same damn mistake. So even even AMD started to make that mistake. Everybody started making that little mistake. But y'all went and attacked Asus for nothing. Saying, oh, I'm going to take, that's it, we're done, we're discontinuing from Asus, we're done with them. And you know what I said? So be it. You're going to be done with them? We're not. We're not, because everybody has their PR marketing problems. Everybody has problems with their hardware matching to their software. Every company does. Anytime you bring out a new product, it's always going to have a headache, because you're always trying to update it to get it to work correctly and everything else. Look at the idea of Intel with their Arc A750. They're always updating their driver software, their software for their cards, to get better and more performance. Just like, you know, AMD does, just like nvidia does, just like Asus does. Everybody does the same thing. They update it to get the better of the graphics. They update it to get the better of the horsepower from the motherboard. Okay. Now, the whole Q&A about this is this. Somebody asked me, would I ever give up Asus to go to another motherboard manufacturer? I'm going to tell you like this. It doesn't matter what name you strap to whatever motherboard or whatever the case is. It matters the performance. And to me, the performance is king. If that motherboard helps my GPU perform better, helps the bottlenecking of the RAM to the CPU and eliminates that bottlenecking, you know, where are you going to run? You're going to run for that manufacturer. Doesn't matter if it has MSI, Gigabyte, Asus, doesn't matter if it has EVGA strapped to it, doesn't matter who's strapped to it. Does not matter whatsoever whose name is strapped to that board. If it's going to perform better, yeah, it's going to make their company shine because it's performing better. But when it comes to the matter of, you know, the name is king, when it comes to, you know, gaming performance and everything else, it's not who's producing it, it's what it's about. What is the hardware about? Everybody fearmongers over the fact of, well, this person made it, this person made it, this person made it. So freaking what? Who cares who made it? If the product performs at 100% and gives you an extra 30%, are you really going to care whose name on it? The only reason you're going to care whose name's on that board is the fact of they're the ones that made it. But that doesn't mean that they're the ones that made the processor. Okay, understand, companies are broke up into many pieces. Okay, you have your motherboard manufacturers, you have your processor manufacturers, you have your graphic card manufacturers, you have your random access memory manufacturers, you have your hard drive manufacturers, you have many different manufacturers. Some manufacturers, they do the motherboard and the graphics card. Some do the graphics card and the processor. You know, it's a big mixed up ball of wax. So you can't say that the thing is this. Hey, oh, my motherboard caught fire. Okay, you're going to tell yourself that. Okay. You got other people going to tell you that. And they show you the evidence. What did they do for that to happen like that? Everybody's going to investigate it. And they're going to find out why. They're going to find out why. Just for an example, they said on the AM5 series, one of Asus's motherboards caught an X3D chip on fire. Okay, caused it to smoke. Okay, what if the parameters were preset to have that catch on fire? You don't know this, and I don't know this. You don't know if it was sabotage to do that. Okay, I'm not saying it was, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it was, but I'm saying, like, you don't know the actual cause and effect. And that's the reason why you got reviewers. They take that same scenario and they try it for themselves, and they try to find out what the cause was. And then they show you what the cause is. Okay, they show you in detail what the cause is and what can remedy that cause. Okay, hopefully they put a remedy behind after the fact of telling you that, you know, this is the cause and this is how you remedy the cause before it gets worse. Before many people start saying, well, my board's catching fire. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And that's exactly what you got these consumers that bought certain motherboards, and they're sitting there telling them, what do we do? What do we do? Everybody's sitting there yelling to the moon about what the cause is. But do you go into enough detail to show somebody in the bias how to remedy the situation so it doesn't happen? No, you just talk about how it just happens. Now, if I have one of those cards in my hands, I'm going to take my camera right here and I'm going to take you along for the ride. And I'm going to take and turn my camera right there in front of my screen and show you exactly what to do to remedy the problem. So that way you have a solution. All you had to do was drop the SoC voltage. All you had to do was drop the CPU voltage. You know, the VDDR-CR voltage. You know, all you had to do is drop the SoC down to a reasonable power. Instead of having it run overpowered at 1.2 volts, you could have ran it at 1.1 volts and locked it. Simple. And then you could have went into the PBO curve and give it a negative curve of negative 15, negative 20. That right there would have brought the heat down. That right there would have brought the voltage down. And then you can just manually clock your RAM to whatever maximum it goes to and lock that down. And run everything else on auto, and boom, you're done for the day. Okay? Very simply, it could be done. You know, I don't have that motherboard in front of me right now, so I can't show you exactly what to do on that scenario. But it just makes more sense if, you know, it's just like the fact of, and here's another example. It's like the fact of everybody's saying, oh, the RTX 4090 is catching fire. The plugs are melting. The plugs are melting. Okay. And what did they do in that response to fix it? They did a breakdown to see where the fault was, and they said, oh my God, it's the consumer's fault. They're not plugging it in all the way. Okay, so it's now the consumer's fault. It's not the manufacturer's fault of that plug that made that piece of plastic, that plug, didn't make it out of Teflon, didn't do anything to make it better, just made a thin, hard plastic that won't even hold up to maybe 350 watts. Okay. But, it's still the consumer's fault. Okay, now you have Cable Mod did the little adapter, and that melted. So what happens then? Oh my God, it's that Cable Mod, that little 90-degree connector melted. It wasn't plugged in. Yeah, same scenario. It's the consumer's fault. It's the customer's fault. If it was the customer's fault, then why did Cable Mod go to the extensive length that if your connector, you use their connector and it melted, they're going to buy back your GPU? Why did they do that? That right there is a lot of money out of their pocket just to prove a point. So, and turned around, Northridge Fix said it wasn't the connector. It wasn't Cable Mod's fault. It wasn't their connector's fault. It was fully seated. Okay, then now how can you prove that it's the customer's fault? You can't. Because now it's leading up to the fact of the motherboard. What's happening on the motherboard that's making those pins melt? Okay, well, they got two ways they can pull power for your graphics card. One is through the motherboard, and the other one is through the connector. Okay, now your connector is only rated for a certain amount of wattage. Okay, you go over that certain amount of wattage, it's going to melt. Common sense. Why did that connector melt? Too much wattage being pulled out of there. That connector, they say, oh, it's rated for 600 watts. No, it ain't. That connector is no bigger than an 8-pin connector that's rated at 150 watts. And at least the 8-pin connector has thicker plastic than, guess what, that 12-pin connector they use, or 16-pin connector they use for the 4090. That connector they use for the 4090 is thin-walled plastic. So you expect 150 watts or greater to go through that and not melt. Use your common sense. You can use whatever X-ray machines or whatever you want to see if that's the problem, which it is. Especially if, it's molded plastic. Molded plastic will only handle up to a certain amount of degree of heat. Okay, this is a good example. And I want you all to, hear me out on this. Take a 200 watt light bulb, screw it into let's say a lamp. A lamp that's only rated at 65 watts. Plug that into the plug and let it run. Over a little period of time, check between the end of the plug and where the cord meets, and check right there. You're going to feel it getting warm. And then it's going to start getting warmer and warmer and warmer. Guess what's going to happen? It's going to burn off. So don't you think that the same scenario, that if you're trying to take 200 watts out of that, from that connector, and pull that into that GPU, It's a push-pull situation. Okay, there's a difference between alternating current and direct current. Okay, direct current is, it's very streamlined. Alternating current goes back and forth. Okay, now your direct current goes into a loop, goes around. But they always tell you, and this is very keen, your ground has to be larger than your positive. It has to be larger. Because on the loop, when it pulls it back, it pulls more current through that negative line than it would that positive line. As crazy as that sounds, but it's true. That's why you always got to have your negative a little bit bigger than your positive. It's like your light switch. They tell you never wire your light switch onto the hot side of the current. Did they tell you why? No. Because if you wire it onto the hot side of the current, what happens is that it's going to pull that current through there, or no, the ground side of the current, sorry. Never put it onto the ground side of the current, the common. Is because it's going to pull more current through there and it's going to burn that up. It's going to overheat the switch. Just like your service breakers. It's kind of different in that fact, but just to tell you that with the matter of your direct current going through that plug, it pulls more current through your ground side of that plug than it does your hot side. So they rate that same connector. I seen it. It's very thin plastic. Even the 8-pin connector is thicker in plastic than that is. At least the pins are separated, not into bars, because those little bars right there, are like fuses. Okay? That's like a fusible link that you put inside that head of that connector, and you plug it into that GPU. You just plugged in a fusible link. That's where they made their mistake. Instead of running in individual wires coming out of every socket, which they should have done. Run them individually. That would have eliminated the problem. But don't quote me on it. I'm just another reviewer. I don't know what I'm talking about, but you know what? I kind of do. Because I pull close to 200 watts off of this 4070 out of this 8-pin plug. 200 watts. And I've already measured it. So, what are you going to do? You think about it, if I'm pulling 200 watts off a 150 watt connector, then why is the 4090 burning up? And hello to everybody that came in. Welcome. I see you there. I see a couple views there. Welcome in once again. But it comes down to the fact. Did they make a great product, or did they make a fusible link? Well, you know what? My opinion, they made a fusible link. And when you get a fusible link, it's basically when you're pulling too much current through a fusible link, it's going to heat up and it's going to catch fire. And you take a regular fuse and do the same thing and pull more current than you're supposed to through that fuse, and that's the same scenario. So that's why your plugs are melting. When you got a flat piece of wire going through there, that's very thin walled. That turns it into like your stove top. The coils on your stove top. It's the same damn thing. So that's the reason why they should have put everything on individual wires plugging into that socket and then called it good. That would have eliminated all that problem, all that juju. So, manufacturers, there's your answer. Put everything on individual wires and then make your bridge not on the connector but behind the connector. Make your bridge behind the connector into how many wires you want back there. Never make your bridge onto the connector itself and mold it in plastic. That is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And then everybody complains, oh, we're not plugging it in. No, we're not plugging it in. You know, that doesn't matter. As long as you got one quarter of continuity between the two, and you can take a multimeter, and as long you can unplug it a quarter way, as long as you got continuity between the two with no resistance, you know, come on. You're going to blame it on the consumer? No, blame it on the manufacturer that made a fusible link that's in that plug that's catching fire, because when you pull it on full bore, you're going to guess what? You're going to take and pull a lot of power from there, and guess what? It's going to turn that into like a heating source like you have on your stove. So there's your answer. Answer everybody's been looking for. It's common sense. It's been right there all along. Nobody was looking at the answer. Make each individual wire separate. Make your bridge in the back of it, away from the plug. And then you'll eliminate the heating problem that you got. More breaks in, and understand, more breaks in your current causes a fusible problem. More, and understand this, more breaks in your current causes a fusible problem. Okay? It doesn't take a genius or a rocket scientist to tell you keep a direct line, try to less breaks as possible, because that way you can allow more current draw. More current draw. Get that? More current draw to the item. The more breaks you got, the more that you lose continuity. Okay? The less breaks you got, the better your continuity is. The more breaks you got, the less. That's the way current works. Okay? It doesn't take rocket scientists to understand that you put a fusible link inside of that connector and molded plastic around it. That is a manufacturer error. It wasn't thick enough. When you make it you make it like, you know, you can make it as wide as you want, but you make it so thin that it's getting close to almost a hair, the thickness of a hair. The closer you get to making it close to the thickness of a hair, guess what? Here's the answer. It's going to turn it into a heating source. So that plug that you all got is nothing but a hot pad. Okay? Now, cable mods, I'm not cutting on you. I think you're doing a great thing and everything else, but the answer to the equation is that you, unless the gauge of that link between, you know, the connector and the connector in between the two, if it's not thick enough, it's not going to carry the current. It's going to turn it into a hot pad. And yes, it will take, and it'll it'll look for the weakest point, and electricity always do. It looks for the weakest point, and it'll ferment off of that weakest point. So if the weakest point is plugging into the GPU, and that's the weakest point right there, then that's where it's going to hit it hard the most. The strongest point, which would probably where you plug it in at the other side, that's going to be your strongest point. So you need to beef up your weakest point, so this way it stops it overall. But when you're using like maybe 1 to 2, maybe 1 to 1.5, because look at a regular fuse, it's only like a 1-inch fusible link. Not even that, a half-inch, maybe a quarter-inch, or maybe just quarter or half-inch fusible link. So if you got a half-inch or greater, then yeah, there's your problem. Okay, don't take my word for it. Test it out yourself, and if I'm right, let me know in the comments below. Or just let me know in any comments. Say, hey Jay, we tested out your theory and you were right, and if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. You can let me know that too. But I can tell you the thickness of the gauge of the link in between hooking it up to the graphics card and then hooking it up to the power supply, the link in between the two, that's where the problem could be. Now, if you get a single link that has all the wires directly connected to each pin, like to the connector, the connections inside, then the thing is this. Just like the 8-pin connector, where you got each individual wires, they're probably 22 gauge, 24 gauge, or so on. Still have to carry 150 watts. So you figure at 150 watts, divide that by 8, and what do you come up with? Let's see. Let's just do that real quick. I won't pull you guys up to do that. So we go 150 watts on a connector, and you divide that by 8. So each wire has to be able to handle 18.75 watts. Minimal. So if you're using 50 watt wire, what do you think's going to happen? Nothing. Because that's either you're using 22 or 24 gauge. No. Yeah, 22 or 24 gauge. But, when you mold plastic in between 1 inch of a fuse, that heat source is going to go right to the ends of those plugs. It's going to make them hotter. Just to let you know, it's going to make it hotter. So do expect that to happen. So you can take my word for it, or you might not take my word for it, or whatever the case is. But I can tell you the problem with the connectors on the 4090, if you're pulling 600 watts, if I pulled 600 watts through a fuse, if I pulled 600 watts through a rated fuse that's only rated at 150 watts, or 18 watts, or 20 watts, if I pull 600 watts through something that's only rated for 20 watts, what do you think's going to happen? It's going to heat. So, that's common sense. The gauge on the fusible link between point A and point B is too thin. So you make it thicker. And the thicker you make it, the more current it will allow you to draw. But the thinner you make it, the less current it will allow you to draw, and then you're going to be screwing yourselves over the fact of that, now you made a mistake. So if you want to eliminate a mistake, you have to first, figure out what it is and then solve it. Okay, another mistake is those pin connections between the two. Now, I don't like the way the pressure fingers look on those connectors sliding onto those pins. Those pins don't look healthy enough to be solid pins. They can use the same pins that they use for the 8-pin connector and put it on that 12 or 16 pin connector. Use those same pins. Use the same pins. Don't put all the wires through, what you got. The way it looks on the inside, that, inside that connector, they got 4 hot leads and 4 ground leads. So now you're only drawing 20, 40, 60, 80 watts off of 4 leads, 4 hot leads and 4 ground leads, 4 in and 4 out, 80 watts. By the way this looks, you only should be pulling 80 watts from that connector. No, you're pulling more than you're trying to pull 600 watts from that connector. So unless it's thicker, you pull up 600 watts, okay, you better be using something that's close to 16 or 18 gauge. At least 16 gauge. None of them wires that you ever use for the power supply to the graphics card never look 16 gauge. Okay? They always look like they're 24 to 26 gauge. And they got barely maybe 30 strands in there. Not even 30 strands. So, if you're using a wire that's less than 30 strands, then you're pulling too much current. So, it's common sense. Me, the way I would have done it, if it was the 4090 and I did the connector my way, I do the same thing they do in the radio business. Like with your car stereo. Use 2 big lines for your power and your ground, and then you got 1 remote wire. Remote wire doesn't really have to worry much. You can use 20, 24, 22 gauge. It's just a remote wire. It kicks on the power on and off. That's the way I'm considering the 4090, the same way. You could have ran 2 big old connectors, one for the hot and one for the ground, and connected it through a plug, a special plug that's heavier and thicker and gauge inside of the plug, off of 2 big lines, 2 8 gauge lines, and then ran it to the other side where the PSU was, and then, go from there. Plugs into the PSU under that new plug. No, you had to run a 16 plug. I would have ran a 3-wired plug, 1 for remote, 1 for hot, and 1 for ground, and run it 8 gauge. Those 2 lines alone are a lot smaller than the lines that they got in here. This little flat thing. You could have just did it with 2 big 8 gauge wires. That would have been equal to 4 gauge. Now, if you look at the cable, it looks like the same thing. It's equal to about 4 gauge. So, my opinion, I would have ran 2 8 gauge lines, because 8 gauge lines will handle up between 1200 and 1400 watts. So if you're running 600 watts through a 8 gauge line that handles 12 to 1400 watts, you're golden. You don't have to worry about anything melting, Because you're using two big honker, using one big honker connector with two big line feeds in there. That are about maybe maybe about a 1/4 inch thick. The male and female is about a 1/4 inch thick. So being a 1/4 inch thick, running to 8 gauge, I don't think you ever have a problem. I don't even think it'd ever catch fire. I don't even think you'd have to more worry about the fact of running your car stereo on something that big. But if you're running a 1600 watt power supply, you can definitely run a good car stereo on a 1600 watt power supply. So if you had connectors like that, it was just 2 lines and 1 remote wire, that 4090 would be screaming. I mean, you wouldn't have to worry about power draw. That 4090 could never draw the amount of power that's bigger than the rate of the cables. And plus, you can decorate those cables up and make them look really nice. And it just looks like one big solid strand going right from your GPU to your PSU. Plugs directly into the card, right into your PSU. Big honker wires. No power loss. No power drain. No crashing, no nada. It's just, hey, look, it's just my idea. That's the way they should have done it. That would have been common sense. To me, that would have been common sense. But, who am I to say that? I just tell you my opinion. That's all. But back to what we were doing before I got sidetracked. And that's going back to the fact of, and we're going to go back to it. Going back to this. So, we were looking for a motherboard. Okay, the motherboard I'm going to recommend, that's going to be the one I always recommend, that I see that's going to be the best I see so far is the Asus B550 right here. Right here. Oh, that's the Prime. Never mind. My bad. That's the Prime. Let's see. How can we fix? Let's do this. Go B550 dash A. There we go. This is what I'm looking for right here. Okay. Now, their going rate is $169.99, $170, yes. Okay. But the amount of features it has, it's definitely a good motherboard. And I'm going to tell you that much. I mean, if you look at the motherboard, it looks exactly the same as what I have. And that's what I'm running in my system right now. I'm running that with the Ryzen 7 5700X. Yes, I could have went to the 5800X for a couple dollars more. I could have went to the 5800X 3D for a couple dollars more. But do remember, if I go to get the 5600X 3D, just to say if I do, why would I do that? Why would I downgrade instead of upgrading? Okay, now I want you all to understand, X3D sounds really good with the L3 cache and everything else. Okay, The problem I have with it, I don't like that they have to restrict you to downclock it. They downclock it for you and restrict you from all the advantages that it has. So that way they make sure you don't burn it up. Why would I take and get an X3D chip that I can't do anything I want with it? Just because you can't figure out the fallacy of how to take that V cache, that V cache that's on there, that extra L3 cache, and put it into a fashion to keep it away from the hotspot of the heating point, the hotspot. So, and supposedly the hotspot shouldn't be on the chiplet anyway. You should be drawing less heat off of those chiplets anyway. Your hotspot should have been on the little monolithic die that's in the center. That's the big die, the one that's controlling everything. Now, the other ones shouldn't be that much of a hotspot. So I'm not fathoming what they're doing by stacking one on top of the other and expecting everything to run. Now, if you're so worried about heat, why are you stacking on top of one another? You think the signal can't travel from point A to point B any faster? If it's only got one CC die, then you could have put right next to it on the side where you would have put a second one. You could have put that 3D cache right there and then just rewired everything in. And that would have been less amount of heat. And then you wouldn't have this little problem of worrying about so much about the heat. Stacking one on top of the other. Worried about the fact of, is the glue going to hold that's keeping them together? So, you could have stacked it off onto the side. I don't see that much of a difference between a 32nd of an inch of a piece of wire. I really don't see the difference in that. I really don't. That you could have put them side by side instead of stacking them on top of each other and then went that route. No, you had stacking on top of each other. The only thing is, you instead of stacking the 3D cache on top of the core, you should have stacked the core on top of the core and put the 3D cache off to the side. That would have made more common sense than to stack the 3D cache on top of the core. So, that's just my 2 cents. You can take for whatever it is. But it just doesn't make sense to me that you're attaching the core. You attach the core to the 3D cache. So you got your core right there on the bottom, and then you stack your cache on top of it, thinking that it's going to be that much faster. Which it's not. It doesn't matter where you put the 3D cache. It has no difference where you put it. The only thing is if you stack it on something that's a potential heat source, which I think the cores are a good potential heat source. So if you stack the cores on top of each other, like the cores in the V cache, yeah, you're going to have a heating problem. But since you have an opening spot, you could have stacked it over onto the side. Just to let you know, you could have took the 3D cache, stacked it off to the side, connected it up the same way, and had less of a heating problem just by making one little fix. Simple. And then after doing that, you could have probably stacked up maybe, 16 core 32 threads on top of 2 8 core 16 threads. That would have made more sense too. Then the stack your V cache on top of 8 core 16 threads. It just didn't make sense. And you're thinking, well, if you stack two of those together, two 8-core 16 threads together, get 16-core 32 threads, it's going to be a lot more heat in that one spot. Oh yeah, it might be a lot more heat in that spot, but it's not as bad as when you're thermal throttling your 3D cache at 78, 76 degrees, running it on top of 8-core and 16 threads. Or if you take an 8-core and 16 thread processor and you want to put 3D cache to it, then why didn't you stack it off to the side? You had that opening spot with nothing there. Just stack your V-cache there instead of putting it right there on top of the 8-core and 16 threads. Just doesn't make sense to me, guys. It really doesn't. I mean, I really thought about it, and you know, a lot of things just really didn't pan out the way it's supposed to, you know. And that's one of the reasons why I will not buy a 3D cache processor, of 3D processor. That's why I wanted to try the 5600X3D, just to prove me wrong on this. You know, just to prove myself wrong. That, you know, that's got 6-core and 12 threads. Okay, that's more sensible to have 3D cache on 6-core and 12 threads than it is 8-core and 16 threads. For the next 5 years, I would do 6-core 12 threads with 3D cache. More sense. That way you would have better sales. No, we got to sit there and put them on these all hopped up next generation chips and think that you're going to get more power out of them. Well, you might. You might get more frequency out of it. But how does it do in your gameplay? Really? Does it make your gameplay any better? Can you play your games hour for hour and for hours? How many hours a day can you play your games for? And without it burning up? Think about it. How many hours can you play it before your FPS drops? Think about it. You'll be lucky to get an hour and a half max before your FPS drops, and you're going, oh, my system's broken. And I'm going to be like, really? So, but if you want to leave it like that and put an X3D chip on there, I mean, I would do the same thing like I did with this X-rated chip here. This 5700X. Set the power voltage low enough, undervolted a little bit. Set your PBO curve, bringing it down just a bit more, and setting up your memory just right, and a couple other things. And guess what? I hate to tell you this. That processor will never get hot. Do you want to know what the temperature of my processor is right now? Running live stream? Let's see if I can do it. Nope. They won't allow me to do it. Shame on them. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll do something better. If I can find it. Got so many things going, and you know, we'll find it. We'll just have to go to the link. We found it. That's why you've seen the flash on the screen. Okay. Let's get it all set up for you. Now, there you go. Let me move it over a little bit. As you can see, I'm running at 3.7, 3.5 gigahertz right now. The ratio is set at 3400 megahertz. I said gigahertz, I meant megahertz. CPU core voltage, it's set at 1.1 volts. And the SoC is set at 1.1 volts. This is all the voltages that I have set right here for this processor. I'm showing you right here so you can see what my voltages are. Have they changed since the last time I showed y'all? No. Will they change? No. I'm not. See, if you're not doing overclocking, okay, you want to set it to the best possible voltage that will give you the best possible everything. That'll give you the best FPS, low amount of heat, and everything else, you know, so you don't have to worry about hot, you know, getting too hot. So, as you can see, it says motherboard temperature is 30C, CPU package is 41C, chipset is 37C. So, where can you go wrong with that? So, CPU package alone, I mean, is at 41C. I'm streaming to you all right now. I am streaming to you all on YouTube. And I'm getting that kind of performance out of a Ryzen 7 5700X. I mean, you're welcome to comment and let me know what you think. I can tell you, it is what it is. You know, it is what it is. But this never changes. This will never change. Okay? Not, and when I go to do benchmarks and stuff like that, I will have a test bench for that. I will have a test bench for that. Not the PC that I use all the time. Just, you know, to do videos and stream to y'all and everything else. I'm not going to use that one as a guinea pig to show you what's going on. I'd rather get a test bench, set it up with a decent motherboard, and, you know, test out processors, test out graphics cards and stuff like that. I'd rather not do it in the PC that I got here, because this one's seasoned and set. I don't have to worry about it. Okay? I do not have to worry about it. So this is why I recommend the B550 motherboard that I have, the Asus Strix B550. Okay? I do recommend that. So if that's what you're looking for, then that'll be for you. But to go along with that processor right there, that motherboard that I have right here will run just fine. This motherboard that I got will run any AM4 processor. Any AM4 processor. So it doesn't matter what processor I get, except for the first and second gen. Or first and second Zen. Okay, that's what you got to worry about. But, you know, Zen 3, anything in Zen 3, it's open field. I don't see it bottlenecking anything whatsoever. So if you go to choose your motherboard, you just look for your B550-A. So, and you go right here, click add. So, that's $480 for the processor and the motherboard. Now, if you want to save yourself some money, you can always do this. Let's say you don't want the 5800X 3D. Say you want to do you want to do the 5600X, or you want to do the 5600. 5600X is pretty good. Or you want to do the 5600G. Well, let's say you don't want to let's say you want to do integrated graphics. Okay, recommendation: 5600G, which is at 123, or the 5700G, which is at 167. Okay, now I would go with the 5700G compared to the 5600G, and I'm not cracking on what I have now, but 5700G, that would be the way to go. For the same price as what, a 5700X, same price. So, but the good part is this has got an iGPU. So if you don't want to get, a regular discrete graphics card and pay out the yang, then this is the best way to go. So there's your price, $337.88. That's still a little bit less. Now you move on. Now that you saved yourself, let's say you saved yourself almost $100. Okay, so you saved yourself $100, right? I know it seemed, just follow along with me. We're just going to go right along, and we're going to keep it going. So I know it's been an hour and 27 minutes now, so we're just going to keep moving along, and you saved yourself $100 by the AM4 series. So you go to your memory. So since you saved yourself that $100, guess what? You have enough for your memory. Let's say, you want to do, you can do DDR4 3200 at 16 gigs, but, that's $30, right? But that's only 16 gigs. But that's two 8 gig cards. Okay. But you didn't want to do that. You want room for being able to you want headroom to be able to go upwards instead of going down. So let's say the max you ever want to put in your system is 64 gigs. Okay, so you start off by a 32 gig kit. You can get G-Skill. You can get Corsair. I mean, this one right here, 32 gig Corsair, you can get it for $69. But if you want to pay $30 more for RGB, which I ain't going to pay that for RGB. I don't have RGB up on my RAM. It takes, when you start adding lights to the motherboard, it takes more power away from the motherboard, giving it to the RGB, than it does for giving it to your components like your processor, the RAM itself and everything else. Just go bare black. Just go black. Don't worry about the RGB on your RAM. They make a separate kit that you can take and strap on the top of your RAM if you want RGB, and you can plug it directly into your motherboard or plug it in. They have a controller that you can plug it in separately. So they do make them. If you don't want and I suggest that, if you want the bling, that's fine. You can do the bling. But I'm just suggesting, not telling, suggesting that, if you're going to do something, do it without the bling. You could put bling all through your case. You could put it somewhere else. Save that extra $30 and put it somewhere else. Like in your fans. Like I spent $32 and got a six fans, RGB fans. That's on a separate controller. And I've showed my controller many of times that you've all seen it. So I got the 6 fans and a light strip for less than $40. And then, you go to buy the RAM, and then you look at the $30 difference, because I know there's no sticks out there whatsoever that you can buy for $30 that has 32 gigabytes of RAM and has RGB on it. You'll never ever see any RAM out there with that on it. Never. Because it's too expensive for them to sell it to you like that. They would lose money to do that. So you're best off, since you already know that you're never going to have it that way, you're best off black is best. When it comes to your motherboard, get a shiny black. Get a very shiny black on your RAM, and then when you put your lighting in there, decent RGB lighting, it'll shine off of that black. It'll make it pop. I've always learned to do it like that, but unless you get a white system with all white, then you're just paying for the white. And that's the craziness of it all. Instead of you going to the store getting a can of white spray paint and just changing the color of your own case and your RAM and all that and painting it white, that's $2 compared to spending $60 to $100 just to make it white. So, $2 can of spray. If you know how to paint, do it right. Paint it white. Just saying. You can do whatever you want, but in my opinion, I think it's a waste of time and a waste of money. To put RGB on RAM that you can't sell for a decent price. That they can't sell it for $60. 32 gigs of RAM for $60. With RGB. So, but you got right here a LPX 32 gigabyte DDR4 3600 2x16 perfect kit. It's a 10 nanosecond perfect kit. $70. Well worth it. Add that right there. It's $400. Now let's say that right there is it. You don't need the M.2 drive, the SSD drive. You already have it. You already have your case. You already have your power supply. You have everything else you need. All you do is got to swap out your motherboard and your processor and your RAM out of your old case, and your old case still looks good. And let's say you want to decorate your old case, make it even better, put a little artistic to it. Now do remember, you can take all your stuff out of your case. Your motherboard, your fans, you can strip your case down and create something new, something that's going to really pop. You can be creative. There's plenty of things that you can do to a CPU case to make it the way you want it. You don't have to go out there and spend hundreds of dollars to go do that. You could do it for less than $10, $15. Go to an art and craft store. Less than $10, $15. Make a case whatever you want. Do whatever you want. If you want to make it, splatter painted or whatever, do whatever you want. Have fun. That's the whole idea of making and upgrading your PC and everything else, is to have fun doing it. It's not to make it feel like you have to do it, but it's fun to know that you can do it. That you can break it all down, clean it all up properly, turn around. You know, it's not good to paint your motherboard. I'll tell you that. It's not good to do that. Don't paint your motherboard. Unless you want to paint the heat sinks a different color, then that's a different story. The heat sinks are a different story. But as far as the components and stuff on your motherboard, please do not alter them. Because once you do and you start adding paint to them, you're going to make you're going to take a source that dissipates heat and make it into a hot pad. And then you're going to have more problems. So do yourself a favor, don't paint the components. But if it's got a heat sink on it, you can paint the heat sink. Make it whatever color you want. If you want the motherboard to say Asus like I got on here, then make it say something else. Put a stencil on there and paint it. You know, make it say something else. You can make it say whatever you want. You bought it, you can make it say whatever you want. So that's up to you. You make that choice. I don't make that choice, you make that choice. All I could do is give you the incentive and idea and say it can be done. That I can tell you. It can be done. So, let's say you did all this and you put all your new system, all the new components and everything in there. You know, you plugged in your PCIe 4.0 X4 M.2 drive. You got everything situated, drivers all situated, everything. You got everything running correctly. But, you know, and you're looking at yourself and saying, the graphics card is missing. Of course it's missing. It's built onto the processor. That's one less heat source you have to worry about in your computer. Now, with that one less heat source being in that computer and you got that iGPU, guess what you can do? Instead of buying that integrated graphic card or that buying that discrete graphics card, you know, that's going to eat up the bank, you know what you could have done? You could have made a whole water cooling system to fill where that graphics card went and made it a whole made it like a little city inside there of water cooling. Something nobody ever does. They always worry about what graphics card you got to plug in there. Stop worrying about the graphics card that you got to plug in there. If you got integrated graphics and it serves your purpose, then instead of having an air cooler, you could be having a water cooling system in there. And you can take and transform the whole inside of your case to where you had the discrete graphics card and turn it into something else. Make it something better. Whatever you want to do. There's a lot of things you can do to transform your case. Not everybody is going to be spending $6,000 to $2,000 on a graphics card. Okay? I'm not telling you don't have to, and I don't have a big case. I don't really have a big case. Okay? Yeah, I got a 4070 in there. But it just fits. Just barely fits. It's a biggest that you can put in that case. It's an MATX case that can hold an ATX motherboard. An MATX case that can hold an ATX motherboard, basically. I got maybe from the beginning of where the fans are to that graphics card, I have a close about maybe 3.5 inches left till the graphics card hits the fans in front. So I have that much room. I can put in a 3-inch water cooling system. You know, a 3-inch radiator or a 2-inch radiator. a 360 2-inch radiator. I can add to that. And a low profile pump. I can add it to that. And a water block to go over the CPU. I can add that in. Soft lines. I could do that too. Put some soft lines in there. And with this case, it would be pretty much fulfilled. But I'm kind of worried that if I go to put that radiator system in there, that it's not going to have enough air going through that radiator. So now it'd have to be a pull system, pulling in the air to the case, and then I got in the back a push system which pushes it out. But that means I'll end up having to add 3 more fans to make it a push-pull system to make sure there's enough air going through there. So I have to put fans in the front and then fans in the back, just to push enough air through there so there's not too much heat that comes into the case. The heat is distributed evenly, and go from there. Something to think about. Something to think about. So, but all in all, it's a good thought. But I don't think I want 3 fans sticking out the front of the case neither. Or I could. But then that means I would have to make a shroud to go around those 3 fans. That's a good idea to think about that. And put a water cooling system in here. I think it would be amazing to see that happen. Really. And then the system would be at total rest. Or I could just save my money and time and just put an AIO system in it. Take the 2 fans that are on top, put them down to the bottom, and put me a 240 AIO system in there, and just be done. And that way I can take and turn the processor up a little bit more, because now you got a radiator system that can handle the heat. Not saying the air cooling system, the air cooler that I got on the processor is not doing the job. It's doing the job to a certain point. Certain point to where, it could, an upgrade could be a lot better for cooling for the processor. I could go AIO and spend spend $60, $70, get a cheap AIO. Or I can take and spend $200 or $300 and get myself a full water cooling system, and be in fear, which you'll be in fear with the AIO, you'll be in fear with the water cooling system that it shorts something out. So, I don't know what you all think. Y'all let me know. Let me know in the comments below what you all think, and then we'll go from there. Wow. We're at 1 hour and 44 minutes, almost 1 hour and 45 minutes. Hopefully everybody's doing well, and hopefully y'all watch the video from the beginning to the end, and make sure you stay to the conclusion of what's going on here. Okay, I'm going to give you a small conclusion of what to do here. Alright? Like everybody tells me, get a laptop. Why do I need a laptop for? I don't need no laptop. Okay. Now, just to do that $400 upgrade, get a better processor, get better RAM, get a better motherboard, and you already got 750, 800 watt power supply. Even a 650 watt power supply would still do that justice, because you don't have a graphics card. Now, if you get a graphics card, then you got to think about going up to 750, 850 watts. System I got here run well off of 550. Under load, about almost 600 watts under load. Total system draw in watts, 600 watts under load. So all depends on how you build your system and what you got cooking with it. Do remember that not everybody's system is going to be the same. They can say it's the same, but it's not. Not every system's the same. Understand that. So, and the reason why I say that is for the simple fact, when you buy, let's say you buy all the parts I do, right? But you decide you want to clock your bias in a different fashion than I do. Okay? Right then and there, don't expect to see the same results that I get. Your results could be less or more than what I get. Now, if you try to clock it the same as me, depends on the silicon. You could get less or more. So you can't base it on my settings. You can't base it on my hardware. You can't base it on my software. Is when you plug in the same things, it's based on yours. There will be little tweaks that you have to make to yours to make yours better. But same thing as mine. There's tweaks that I had to make mine better and run, smoother, cleaner, and everything else. Not unless you just want to do the obvious and say to yourself, okay, well, what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to avoid doing all this. I'm going to spend $1,500 and just buy me a pre-built system. Good luck. That's all I'm going to tell you is good luck. I did that already, and that was the worst mistake I've ever made in my whole life. And it's still sitting on the floor right here to be upgraded. I've only used that system for maybe a year and a half. A year and a half. And it's sat ever since that. So, when it comes to that, understand this. It's all about the silicon lottery. If you got it, you got it. You don't, you don't. That system's over 12, 13 years old. Maybe a little more. But I am going to upgrade it. Since it's an Intel, I'm going to upgrade it to Intel. As soon as I get everything straightened around here, I'm going to be upgrading that sleeper build to Intel. Now, am I going to be doing the 13900K like everybody else is doing? Why would I do that? They cut off half the overclocking features. Why would I do that? I'm going to go with the processor that allows you the full overclocking features. It doesn't have all that BS of, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this. Or I could just let it run on auto and let it clock itself. And if on the auto frequency, if it's not set correctly, it can burn it up. So, but I haven't had that luxury yet. I haven't had that happen yet. So, 3/4 of my system right here is running on auto. So I don't have to worry about overclocking to the max. The computer does it itself. Just like the processor. The processor will max itself out. It'll go right to the max that AMD says. And it does every time I watch it. Just just like now. It goes from 34 to 36, and it goes up to 4650 megahertz. That right there, that's the max of this processor. And this is a 5700X. Now, could you imagine the 5700G? Only difference is 16 megs of L3 cache. Only difference is 16 megs of L3 cache. So what? You got integrated graphics. And believe it or not, if you purchase 64 gigs of RAM, and understand this, if you purchase 64 gigs of RAM for your computer, or you purchase 128 gigabytes of RAM, when you go to look in the BIOS for integrated graphics, it'll give you an option of going from 256 to 512 to what is it, to 1 gigabyte, and then it goes up to, I think, 3 gigabytes, then it goes up to, no, is it 3? It might be 3, or it might be 2, somewhere in there. Then it goes to 4 gigabytes, then it goes to 8 gigabytes. But if you got 128 gigs of RAM in your computer, it should go all the way to 16 gigabytes. Now, I'm not too sure if you got 128 gigabytes of RAM in there, max of the motherboard, 4 DIMM sticks, if it actually will go up to 32 gigs of RAM for that iGPU. If it'll allow you to dedicate 32 gigs of RAM for that iGPU. That I never tested. But I did test having 64 gigs, that it does go up to the max of 16 gigabytes of RAM for your iGPU. 16 gigs from a 64 gig stick that you can dedicate for the iGPU. And then the computer does its automation, so on and so forth. But 16 gigs of RAM for your iGPU is considered, like if you go to play like Hogwarts and stuff like that where it requires a lot of that, you could probably get away with playing the 5700G. You could probably get away with playing the 5700G on Hogwarts. Don't quote me on it. I haven't tried it yet. I don't think nobody else has tried it yet with integrated graphics. I don't think they've tried to dedicate the RAM with integrated graphics and separate the two and see how it runs on, the newest games to see if it'll play. I don't know if anybody's done that yet. Probably not. But there's sooner or later I'm going to try it. I'm definitely going to try it. I want to see if that 5700G can handle just as well as the RTX 4070. Not as good, but at least somewhat there. At least if I got it on 1080p, lower mid settings, and it games really well at low and mid settings, gives me a nice FPS and everything, I don't see why that, integrated graphics now becomes the new king, the new minority. I've always loved integrated graphics for the simple fact, in the BIOS you can set the GPU processor speed to max and just leave it there. And you can set the RAM, dedicate it, and leave it. It doesn't matter. And set the fan curve. Well, I don't think you got to worry about too much about the fan curve because it's set for the CPU. So you can make your own fan curve on asus motherboards. Now, I haven't tested out MSI or Gigabyte yet, so sooner or later I'm going to try them out on their motherboards and see what they rock at. and see if it's good or bad. But I can tell you that the motherboards I do purchase, I make sure it allows you to do everything you can for overclocking, or do it on auto if you like just the turbo formula, stuff like that. So, and also too, do remember, if you ever set your motherboard in the BIOS to optimal performance, make sure you enable rebar. Make sure you do that. You enable rebar, because it will disable it, and then when you go into Windows, you'll notice a big difference. So make sure you enable rebar. Even though it's integrated graphics, just enable it. It works. So just keep that in mind. I can tell you, when it comes to this motherboard, the B450 I got and the B550 I got now, either one, they're going to rock. And I know everybody's now picking up that term, oh, rock. How does it rock? What does it look like? A boulder to you or something? No. It's not a paperweight. It jams. Means it runs. It runs very well. It runs more than very well. It runs so good that, I'm so impressed right now with the way it runs. Right now, it's king of my CPU case. What I have in there is king of my CPU case right now. I know you guys say, you're going to tell me, well, DDR4, or AM4, it's a dead platform. In whose eyes? If I'm rocking the most recent video card with this dead platform, do you really think it's dead? Really? Do you really think the platform is dead? Seriously? No. Platform is dead and buried when it's fully discontinued. That's when the platform is dead and buried, when it's fully discontinued. Okay? Now, when they fully discontinue it, that means they stop making drivers and everything else. Just because they stop making drivers doesn't mean you can't get open sourced. Doesn't mean you can't get an update. So, but this platform that I'm on right now is not old platform. AM4 is not, it's an old platform and different steps. Okay, now the latest step that they did, making sure everything was seasoned up and everything, that's the latest step they done. But you really think it's dead? No. They're throwing in a little bit more of a teaser with the Ryzen 5 5600X3D. Hopefully everybody bites on it. It'd be nice to see, if they make a X3D for integrated graphics. That would be interesting. No one's ever done it. But the thing is this, when it comes to Intel, they don't cut away their L3 cache just to put integrated graphics on their processors. I just can't see why AMD is doing the same thing. I really can't. I really can't fathom why AMD is doing the same thing. I can't fathom why nvidia is overcharging everybody for their graphics cards. I can't. But they're overcharging everybody because they're not making no money off of them. That's why they're overcharging. The scenario like you do in a restaurant is this. When you got less customers, what are you going to do? Raise the price. Just like nvidia. You got less customers, they're going to raise the price. And that's exactly what they're doing. So it's business. But they're doing it about the wrong way. They're doing it with every graphics card. Every new graphics card comes out, they're raising the price. Just like I did graphics card nightmare. What was it? Yesterday? Prices are starting to climb back up. So, y'all can take this information whatever way you want. I'm just telling you, the only way it's going to get better is if inflation goes down to an all-time low, everybody has deeper pockets again, everybody can spend like they normally do, and y'all can be worried about when they're going to be rolling out that digital ID and taking the rest of your rights away. It's not politics, it's just what I heard. By 2030, we're not going to be able to have that buying power to buy anything for your PC anymore. And if you go to buy something the government doesn't like, guess what happens? They're going to take your whole paycheck from you. That means whatever money you have in your bank account, they can leverage it from you. And they don't even have to have permission to do that. If you owe somebody money, they could leverage your whole bank account for it. And now they got the idea of where you live. Guess what? You can't buy nothing without them knowing. You can't even use the bathroom without them knowing it. So it's coming. So if I were y'all, and I'm just going to say this, and I'm going to be honest with you, get your PC parts now while you still can. Get them at the lowest prices you can now while you still can. Because I'll tell you, in about less than 6.5 years, it's going to be gone. Everything's going to be digital. Look what Microsoft is doing. You guys didn't really pay attention to the news like I did. Look what Microsoft is doing. They're telling everybody you're not going to have your operating system on your computer anymore. You're going to have a link to their site to run your system. That means your whole operating system is going to be in the cloud. And the only thing is you're going to have a terminal. And that's what they're telling everybody. They're trying to make Windows 11 now into a terminal form, so that way everybody's going to be logging into Microsoft Cloud, and your system's going to be there. And the only thing you're going to have left in your system is the minimal settings on an operating system. But everything's going to be in the cloud, so you're using their CPU power to do all this. They're trying to treat it as like if you're in a business, and you're trying to use the point of sale system, same thing, but they're trying to treat every American the same way by leveraging all your stuff, everything you do day by day on your computer goes right into their cloud. So you lose your rights of having privacy, A to Z. Even if you're doing something an adult thing on your PC with another adult, guess what's going to happen? They're going to know about it. And then your account's going to get stricken. Anything you do on your PC, they're going to know. They're going to know when, like I said, they're going to know when you go to the store. Everything that you do, the government is going to be right behind you. So, I'm not bashing the government. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a hater or anything. I'm just saying the way it's going to be rolling downhill. And I hope you all take my advice from that. And this is not, I'm not talking bad about, the government or anything else. I'm not doing that. I don't do that, and I will never do that. Doesn't matter who's in office, doesn't matter what's going on or anything else. I'm just telling you what I hear and what I know and, what I've seen in my lifetime. So, I've seen a lot of crazy stuff in my lifetime, but this right now, the way things are going, this takes the cake. So, and I don't call nobody out by name. You'll see me every time I, do something on YouTube, making a new video, and I got it, if I do emails or something like that, with y'all, I never call anybody out by name. There's a reason that it's called there's a Protection Act that, people have the right for privacy. So I take that into consideration. Unless the person gives me permission to say, yes, you can use my name, then that's a different story. So I don't do that unless the person gives me permission to use their name and say, hey, it's okay. And they do it live. So, privacy is king. I respect everybody's privacy here on the channel. I respect everybody's wishes on the channel. I respect everybody's opinion on the channel. Just to let you know. I'm not hard to get along with. But all I asked is y'all show me the same respect as I show you all. That's all I'm asking. We all get along great. Love and respect. That's just king right now. So, or queen, just to let you know. But I did make this. It's over 2 hours. It's a 2-hour live stream. Didn't get many on the live stream today. I'm going to make this a conclusion. This is the ending part. This is going to be the conclusion part. As we are at 2 hours and 7 minutes. So, okay, the thing is this. I know my videos are not going to get out right on time. I've noticed my videos coming out 3 or 4 days after the fact, after I posted them. I've noticed what YouTube's been doing is like holding back on my videos. I have ways of finding things out. So, YouTube, do me the respect next time. Put my videos out the same time I post them. The last video, Graphics Card Nightmare, took me almost 2 hours and 23 minutes to upload to YouTube. 2 hours and 23 minutes. And it took me close to 21 minutes to, get it ready. That means basically I have to transform it. Take it from an MOV to what do you call it? MP4 for YouTube. I uploaded all of them as MP4s. There might be a faster way. Who knows? Right now we're running on AV1 encoding. Supposedly, because this is RTX 4070, we're supposed to be doing AV1 encoding. Hopefully the picture looks better, boys and girls. Hopefully, because I'm using a different camera. I'm not using the same one I always used. So, hopefully it looks better. I noticed a little bit of a hesitation with the transferring from the camera to the PC. I noticed there's like a little slight delay. So one day I'll have one of those $1,000 cameras. But right now I got a cheapie. It works. And there you go. For 1080p, it works. What do you expect, right? So, but I just figured I'd get on here today. A little bit of Q&A. I'm sure y'all are going to have questions for me, time and again. I don't mind doing a little Q&A, when people ask me questions. And also, too, not so much Q&A. I do, my thoughts and opinions on a couple other subjects. But I can tell you, they got a lot of subjects coming out right now. But we're looking towards what's going to happen by the time we get to next year. And this is going to be the thing, is Microsoft by 2025 going to roll out to where our computers have to be loaded up to their servers? It's basically the same thing. The cloud, it's their servers. That's the cloud. There is no cloud in the sky that your PC goes to. It's basically their servers, the amount of hard drive space they got on their servers. That's basically where you live, is on their server. Your information, that's where it goes. Unless it's your own PC and, you're doing your own, rocking your own thing. But that's different. That's here. So hopefully maybe one day I'll have a big server that has petabytes to put all my information in. Maybe one server to have to where, or two servers or three, to where, we can have our own little game site. I know that's kind of reaching for the skies, but I see other people doing it, so it sounds like it's fun too. Now, if you ask me on the fact of can I game, I'm gonna give you a helpful hint. There are certain games I can play, but with flashing lights and stuff, I have, and understand this, I have health issues. And there are certain games I can't play, but there's certain games I can play. So, just to let you know, if you don't see me playing many games, I do game. Believe it or not, I do game. I've gamed for ever since I was 6 years old, 5 years old. I've gamed ever since then. So, I played many games. But as my health deteriorated a little bit, kind of changed my gameplay. So, but I can play games, And also, too, I'm going to be working on getting a newer style game to where y'all can go along with me, and then we can, just play that game. So, but that's in time. Okay, so, but anyway, we're going to go ahead and call it right here. If this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe. We're trying to get to the 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours. And thank you once again. If you're a new subscriber, welcome to the family. Welcome to JJ's PC Builds. And I'm sorry that my screen looks like it's got a little bling bling, y'all. But, I wanted the bling in there to make it look a little bit better, to give it a little bit more life and all that. So do understand this is the way my screen is. So in the future it might change, but for now it's going to be what it is. So I'm not, like I said, I'm doing me. I'm putting it out there for y'all. I'm doing me. Okay? And I had other people tell me it looked great, so it looks great. So we'll go from there, and if there's something better in the future, then we'll upgrade it to something better in the future. I'm not open to, I'm not closed-minded to ideas. I'm open-minded to ideas. Just to let you know that. I'm not a closed-minded person. I try to keep an open mind on everything. So that way everybody knows that I'm not just one way. I keep open mind for both ways. What people say on one side and what people say on the other side. Either way, it's all good. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and end the stream right here. Y'all have a fine day, fine evening, no matter where you're at. Make sure y'all stay tuned for the next time. And we got more videos to be coming right here on JJPB.